synthesizer face. Well, hey there. It's your old pal Keith from wavetables.lol. That's wavetables.lol, home of KRC Mathwaves, my gigantic collection of wavetables and single-signal waveforms for all sorts of modern synthesizers, including things like Korg, Modwave Native, Serum, Vital, Phase Plant, yada yada yada, Surge XT, Bitvig, Polymer. You've heard this before if you've watched any of my videos. And lately, I have been working with interesting wavetables and waveforms that exhibit resonant characteristics. In my recent videos, you know, I had been doing things with Bezier waveforms, the Morley wavelet. In both of those have kind of resonant sounds because of the wave shapes. And I've got 3 new collections, so if you can possibly stand it, I know we've long been at more than 140,000 wavetables in KRC Mathwaves, but I've added another 10,000 or so in three, I'm holding up the number 3, in 3 different categories. The first one is called Basic Mix, where I'm exploring what happens when 2 of the basic synthesizer waveforms, I'm speaking of the sine wave, triangle, sawtooth, and square waves, what happens when they meet? And we do interesting things in terms of modulating those. There's also a collection of Formant wavetables now, which I teased in my very last video where I was in Palm Springs. And that exploration is about vocally sounds with different carriers, a sawtooth, a square, and various noise types of waveforms. And then also, most recently, I've been exploring an older synthesis technique called VOSIM for a vocal simulator. Anyway, talky, blah, let's get on with it, Keith. Okay, so let's jump into Modwave Native here behind me. Also, oh, do you like what I've done with my background? I'm very backlit today, so I knocked out my background rather than just being a square with a head in it. And so I'm like a Twitch streamer. Hey guys, hey. Anyway, let's go somewhere and let's see here. Let's see what these basic mix waveforms sound like, shall we? Here's a very, very simple patch where you'll see at the 50% position, we have this waveform that looks like a complete cycle, because it is, of a sine wave, or I guess maybe it's half. Anyway, a cycle of a sine wave and then a cycle of the sawtooth wave. And in fact, yes, these are complete cycles. And it sounds like this. And if you compare that to a full sawtooth wave, right? You'll see what's happening here. We're morphing in this sine wave until we reach the 50%, and they're like half and half. It's half sine and half square. So again, these are, why do I always say again? So again, not again. These are like hybrid waveforms of the basic synthesis stuff. And you'll see as we move up the wavetable, we're gradually growing the size of the sine wave and shrinking the size of the sawtooth wave so that we get this kind of resonant thing that happens. Right? As we move up and down the wavetable. So this is the basic concept behind the basic mix wavetables. And if we were to go into edit mode, we could see, if we go into our librarian and select a wavetable, there's many different types here. When you import these into Modwave Native, you will have several new collections, and I've called them basic mix. So they're labeled BAS mix, base mix, partly because there was already a KRC basic, which is a different concept altogether. I talked about it in a previous video, the one about spectral magic, I believe. And so the basic mix waveforms are found in 3 collections: basic mix here, and then there's a mix FP res, bass mix freak position. We'll get to them in a moment. But as I was developing these, we're kind of embracing our errors as a hidden intention here. And as I was developing the scripts to make these, I did finally land on what I wanted, but there were some interesting mistakes along the way. So let's look at Sine to Sawtooth Mix 1. In the basic mix collection, there are 3 collections of waveforms. There's only like 30 of these, but you'll get to the crazy part in a minute. The Sine to Sawtooth, underscore mix 3. All the ones that are mix 3 are like what I had intended to do. My first attempt at these came out like this, though. Look at this waveform. So this is Sine to Sawtooth Mix 1, and you'll see it's actually half of a sine and then a half of a square wave. And this is a slightly different morphing, where instead of bunching up the waveform and getting those resonances, what we're doing is, you can see, we're sort of like cross-fading horizontally across the waveform. Now, this is not what I intended to do, but it's kind of an interesting sound anyway. And all of the different combinations are in here. So there's not just sine to saw, there's like sine to triangle, sine to square, etc. Saw to square. There's X number of iterations or permutations of those, I guess you would say. And hey, camera, like follow my head. Dude, move me over a little bit. Thanks. Okay. So these are kind of interesting. Now, I didn't notice this at the time, but there's another little error with these. The sawtooth and the triangle waves, I computed slightly wrong, and they're only the positive going portion. You'll see that this sawtooth wave doesn't go negative. So there were 2 errors here, but these were like actually pretty interesting and useful. So then we've got the Mix 2 version. So in Mix 2, let's see, what is going on in Mix 2? So in Mix 2, let's turn off our envelope on the position, shall we? In Mix 2, you see, okay, these are bunching up the way I want them to. The length of the waveform is changing in both cases. But it was at this point that I noticed that the sawtooth was only positive going. And let's see, let's just filter further on Mix 2, shall we? And then we can just see these. So we can see this in the sine to triangle as well. So that triangle, well, it basically has the characteristics of a triangle wave. It's kind of malformed because it's only the positive going portions. But again, this is kind of an interesting waveform itself. Okay, so then finally we landed on the Mix 3s, which are what I had intended to do. Now, one thing about these is that I got to thinking, well, this isn't all we could do here. And in fact, my original idea wasn't just that we could do these at a base frequency of 1 and play with how the resonances change. We could do different frequencies. So we could have multiple cycles of each of the waveforms here, and then we could do all the permutations of those. So that's eventually where we're going to get, and that's why there are, I don't know, more than 6,000 of these wavetables, because that's what I do with KRC Mathwaves. It's a very deep exploration of different synthesis and waveform creation techniques. And I'm taking you along for the ride. So, for $29, you get 140,000 wavetables. I add new stuff all the time on a regular basis. And in fact, I've gotten to so many now that if you already have a lot of wavetables installed in ModWave Native, and I've probably talked about this before, the reasons I demo in ModWave Native and some of the reasons I love ModWave Native, but part of that is it allows you to have a very, very large collection of wavetables inside of it in the native version. You can also get several tens of thousands of wavetables into a hardware ModWave, and it makes it very easy to browse them and to create a patch and then just kind of like flip through different waveforms, wavetables, and find something you like and generate interesting variations. And that to me is a very interesting technique. Blah, blah, blah. Keith, let's continue. All right, so we looked at the basic mix. Like that's what you're going to find in the basic mix wavetables. Let's just go into the library and look at this. Oh, I know where I was going. If we look at the basic mix, so there's 30 of these guys, and then there's different permutations. Let's go to basic mix frequency. So what I was just talking about was that we could, instead of just doing a single cycle of these things, we could do all of the possible permutations, and there are a lot of them here, of all the different basic synthesis waveforms with different frequencies swept across the wavetable position. So for example, I think this is saw 1-to-1, sine 1-to-1. So there's actually no change across this wavetable, right? Like whenever these numbers are the same on both sides, you're actually going to have a wavetable that doesn't have any variation across it. Now, you're probably like, well, that's kind of dumb, Keith, but I'm including those just for completeness so you can understand like what's going on here. Now, here is saw 1-to-1, sine 1-to-2. So you'll see that at the bottom of the wavetable, as it were, there's a complete cycle of the sawtooth wave, a complete cycle of a sine wave, and we've heard what that sounds like. It's sort of like a slightly filtered sawtooth wave, yes? And then as we go up to the 50% position, now you'll see what's happening is we're starting to get a higher frequency of the sine wave until we get all the way to 2 cycles. And if we were to sweep this, we would hear this slight resonance. And you'll note that we're hearing this kind of timbral change that sounds a little bit like a resonant filter, but we're not actually modulating our filter cutoff. We don't have resonance turned up on our filter. So these wavetables have these resonances built into them. And as we get to ones that have more and more, high frequencies, right, for one or both of the sides, we hear more of a resonant sweep kind of characteristic. And so I did these all the way up to 4 cycles. And these are great, these are great for like anywhere that you would use any of the basic synthesizer waveforms. They just have a different character. And if you were to, you could compare these to the Morley wavelet wavetables that I did in a previous video, right? They have this kind of same look to them where you can actually see that resonance sweeping across the wavetable as you look at it in 3D. And they have a similar sound. But as we get into other ones, like saw to square is really interesting. And again, all the ones in this collection, they have this suffix mix4 on them, so you could further find them if you don't want to select the collection, right? Let's do like saw square to 1, like saw 1-to-1, square 3-to-2, shall we? Let's look at this guy. All right. So now this is an interesting waveform, right? So there's 2 cycles of the square wave. We've got a single cycle of the saw, and we're going to go down to 3. Let's hear how that sounds. Very interesting, right? We've got that built-in resonance, and like this waveform, as I like to say, is just begging to be filtered. So let's turn our filter cutoff down as we've done. We could even turn up our resonance to further enhance the resonances that are already within the wavetable. So this is pretty cool, right? You could do a lot of plucky stuff, whatever you want to do. Like anywhere you could use a sawtooth or a square, you could use this. And because there's all these like different variations, you have zillions of wavetables to work with here. Let's turn our filter back off so we can hear what they sound like. And that sweeps too fast. And these respond really well to things like stretch. get these PWM-y kind of effects, and right, you could put like an LFO on that. I've got my filter LFO set up to modulate position should I desire it. So we could go up to like the 50% point. Turn off that envelope there. Interesting, right? Oops, filter LFO. Lots of neat things you can do here. Now we could sit around and explore these a lot more. Let's play just another couple patches, but I want to get to some of these other things that I've been doing. Let's see here. Let's just find our basic mix patches. Some serving suggestions. I mean, you heard this flanger one. Yeah, it's got this really wild resonant sound and also a filter sweep on it. And this aggressive sound isn't just coming from the fact that we have a flanger on it. We could turn the flanger off. You know, it still has like a lot of juice to it, and there are actually two oscillators going here. We've got a triangle to square, and we've got a square to triangle, and we're doing a little stretch modulation on it. And oscillator 2. I guess I could go in play mode. I never go into play mode so you can see both wavetables. Wow. All right. So that kind of sound, kind of nice. You could also do, these are really great for filter sweeps. Really nice stuff that you can do. Let's see, wait a minute. What's this one? It's just an example. So here we're just sweeping across two of the mix threes, right? So they have one cycle of each thing. Nice. All right, let's see here. Did we talk about changing frequencies? Oh yeah, we did. Well, okay. We kind of need to go back because let's explore some more aspects of the collection. So when we are in here, so I guess we did the frequencies, right? So then the next step up from, you know, KRC bass mix frequency is to modulate the frequency and the position. So I didn't really point this out before, but you noticed that we were just sweeping across the frequencies. We weren't changing that transition point between the two wavetables. But this one does that, and this one does it with that horizontal fade effect. Let's just select a couple waveforms from that collection. Let's see, wavetables from that collection. So frequency and position, I'm just grabbing a couple at random just so we can show. And so you'll see that what's happening in this one, right, is we're going from a square, one cycle to one cycle, and a triangle from 3 cycles to 1. So the triangle wave is going higher in frequency as we go down the wavetable. It will sound like this. We're in OS1, let's turn that off. There's some interesting transitions that happen there, right? Let's bring oscillator 2 back in. Oscillator 2 is like this. So it's a saw 1 to 1, sine 2 to 3. And so again, you can see that transition point moving across the waveform, but we're not bunching things up to create a resonance in these versions. So these are the ones labeled underscore mix 5, and they're in bass mix frequency position. Okay? Nice sounds in there, nice sounds. Again, kind of classic synthy types of sounds. Now, if we wanted to go to the next set, let's do that. So we'll keep the same very basic patch. And instead of the bass mix frequency position, we'll go over here to the bass mix FP res, meaning frequency position and resonance. And let's just select a couple of these at random. Here's a, let's see, we don't want that. We want a saw, let's do saw 1 1, square 1 to 3 for this one. And so you can see that this guy, let's turn your filter LFO off, okay? So you see that this guy goes from a square wave, I guess, to a, what is it? To a sawtooth. And you'll see that on either side, like it bunches up. It's easier to see on the square side, which is here. The saw side is here. And as we move up the wavetable, we're increasing both the frequency of the square wave, but we're also changing its length, so it's shorter and shorter, and it's getting more and more resonant. And so this one would probably sound very interesting if we morphed it in this direction. Let's turn up our filter so that we can hear it. So those are the sorts of tones that you'll find in the frequency position resonance versions of these. Let's put another one in oscillator 2, shall we? Let's see, let's do triangle to saw, sure. So this one is going to have like a lot of motion. You'll see that the frequencies and the resonance is changing a whole lot across it. And here's what it sounds like. So you can see that by combining like multiple waveforms from these collections into a 2 oscillator synth, again, this is just a 1-layer patch here. You can get really cool sounds, you know, and we can turn our filter cutoff like way down. We could use different filters, but they'll sound good like this. Got instant chill out, huh? Let's change how much our envelope modulates the filter. Cool stuff. All right, maybe that's enough about the basic mix frequencies. I'm going to stop for a second, and then we'll move on to other types of waveforms. Look at some more formanty things, which are also exploring these kind of resonant wavetables. All right. You know, I forgot that like one of the things you could do with sounds like these, you can get like really 80s-ish kind of analog sounding sounds if you do them the right way. And so the same thing that we were just like playing some kind of chill out chords with sounds like this in the bass register. Oops. Well, I live with snakes and lizards and other things that go bump in the night, because to me, every day is Halloween, right? I've given up hiding. I've started to fight. Which brings us to our next category of new wavetables in KRC Mathwaves, which might be suitable for certain kinds of bass music. Let's go try to find some of these, shall we? Let's look at growls. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Actually, I did a combo here with the, this is a good introduction. I did a combo here with the basic mix wavetables and these Formant wavetables. Whoa. So what is going on there? What is happening? Is everyone okay? So, in this patch, we've got one of the basic mix waveforms, right? Or try 4 to 4, square 3 to what? Square 3 to 3. Oh, it's not even really changing the frequencies, but it is changing the position across the wavetable. And so let's see, that part sounds like this. And then, wait a minute, why are we still hearing? I feel like we're still hearing oscillator 2, don't you? Oh, no, we're not. Wow. Well, apparently I just discovered something that you can make pretty cool growls with the basic mix wavetables. But what I was really trying to show is that over in Oscillator 2, we put one of these Formant wavetables, and I'll talk about how I made these in a second. Ah, they have these very vocal characteristics to them. So a formant, right, is a resonant frequency that happens in a waveform that is similar to what the human vocal tract or animal or alien vocal tracts might produce. And so they are basically a waveform where we have accentuated these vowel-like frequencies. And I did a huge collection of these. Let's just see. I know I'm kind of freestyling today. I'm just, I'm happy to talk with you, friend. And, I just want to talk about my wavetables. And you're like, well, that's really weird because, like, I just, wanted to talk about sports. So if you go in the librarian, you will find when you import these things into ModWave Native, of course, in the other formats, you will find them in their own folders. They have sensible names. You'll be able to find them on my Gumroad product page. There is a whole new collection called KRC Formants. And so there are these ones. They all have the name Formant in them. And we were just listening to a sawtooth format. So what the format waveforms and wavetables are about is I started with carrier wave, typically a very rich one. So typically, what I did two. Okay, I did the sawtooth wave as a carrier and the square wave as a carrier, and then I also did uniform noise and Gaussian noise as the carrier, and ran those digitally in a script through a bandpass filter that's morphing between all of the common vowel formants. And so you'll see that, what do we have here? If we select format saw, we've got 1980. That's fun. There's 1980 waveforms. Welcome to 1980. And they are every combination of these common vowel sounds. Like I did this one goes to A, E, R. The labeling's a little bit weird, but that's how we do. Let's go. Or just get one. Let's see. Here's A, E, I, E, R. Let's listen to what that guy sounds like. Oh, I guess it's going in reverse. Let's turn off reverse mode. Yeah, that's kind of A-E-I-R. And I'm going to go down an octave. These get like super growly in the lower registers. And then we're doing kind of a, okay, bass music. I'm not a dubstep producer. But I know that a lot of people are interested in wavetable synthesis because it's very common to use things like Serum, which is a wavetable synthesizer, in the production of bass music, whether that's dubstep or future rhythm or color bass, which is maybe the genre that I can stand the most of those. But who doesn't love a little Skrillex now and then? Anyway, I wanted to make some things that might be useful in, bass music production. Now, one thing that sounds from those genres have in common is it's really just all about filter sweeps, right? And the production chains are more than just a single synthesizer. So while you can make, for example, like a legit ish dubstep patch in any wavetable synthesizer, there's a whole lot of art that actually goes into the specific sounds that you hear in those genres, right? And they go beyond the capabilities of the synthesizer. Like very often, that synthesizer voice will then be processed with, multi-band compression, in color base with like, chromatic and spectral techniques like you find in plugins like Chroma, which I find very interesting and I would love to do a video on. And you can hear it in my previous video there was Poolside Gossip. I just played a little segment of something that I was playing with. where we take patches like this and run them through Chroma. And see, I'm trying while I talk, I'm trying to be nice and like let you listen to other sounds rather than just my voice droning on and on. But there's a whole bunch of these Formant Wavetables. And we'll talk about some of the differences, I guess, in a second. But maybe I'm done talking about bass genres. But you know, they're really all about filter sweeps, and sometimes there'll be complex filters. But one of the things that's maybe different from, say, classic East Coast synthesis, where we're trying to emulate, you know, the behavior of physical instruments in the analog or digital realm. In bass music, like often it's all about like high pass filtering and band pass filtering, which are a little more unusual in standard synthesizer production. So that's kind of what's going on in this patch. You know, we've got, I'll turn the oscillator 1 back up. You know, we've got our basic mix waveform here, and then we've got this thing that's distinctly growly that's just adding a little bit of flavor and really accentuating that vowel type movement. So just to talk about these real quick, I mentioned that there's all the different combinations of vowels, from 2 different vowels up to 4, I think. Let's see, A, E, I, R. I think it's 4. I don't think I went to 5, or else it'd be way more wavetables. Also, you know, you can't really modulate things that much when you have that many differences going on. But what you'll find is that in all of these, let's go to Formant Saw, you'll find all the different vowels, and so those are indicated by, you know, A, E, I, R here, okay? And then sorry, I was pronouncing the but the R is a resonance value. So when I was computing these, I made different resonances in the bandpass filter that's creating the vowel sounds. And there's actually 6 different settings there. So there's 1 through 6. And these do have distinctly different sounds. So like, let's listen to, is there enough difference here? Hold on. Let's turn down oscillator 1. We're just going to listen to oscillator 2. And we'll hear the differences. Actually, let's just change make our high pass filter a little less extreme. Or maybe we'll just, let's do this. Let's essentially turn it off, shall we? Okay, let's do this so we can actually hear this wavetable. All right, so that's A, E, I with a resonance of 1. Then I also do a version where instead of there being a constant pitch to the saw carrier, it actually goes up. It actually goes up an octave, and it sweeps over the course of the positions in the wavetable. And those have distinctly different sounds. Whoa. All these are neat, by the way. Or nifty, as I like to say. And so then here's resonance 2. So those are the same vowel sounds, but with a different with different sharpnesses in the resonance. I'm kind of partial, and again, all of the variations have a pitch variation too. I'm partial to resonance 3, which I think is the most kind of human vocal. But you might have your favorites in here as well. I know, it's kind of boring to listen to someone audition wavetables, I think. Anyway, that's what all the different variations mean in the file names. So it's the type of waveform, of course, then there's formants, the actual formants that we're evoking, and then a resonance value, and then there are the ones that don't say pitch. They are just a constant pitch. The ones that say pitch, actually over the course of the wavetable, morph between a bass 1 frequency and bass 2. And this just creates a lot of different timbral variation. And there's lots and lots of these, as we saw. And then that's what the sawtooth carrier sounds like. We also did these with the square wave carrier. And you'll see that these have a distinctly different look and a distinctly different sound to them as well. Theoretically, they're going to have more odd harmonics in them. They're just a nice alternative to the sawtooth ones. And these are all, again, these are all the same technique. So you will find equivalents of like every single sawtooth version of the Formants and every version of the square Formants. You could put the same sound with a different carrier into two different oscillators and get interesting effects. Now, I also did these using Gaussian noise and uniform noise. Now, these might not seem at first as useful. I mean, this is pretty wacky. So the carrier in this case is a noise waveform. And, you know, one of the limitations of wavetable synthesis is that while we can simulate noise as long as we are sweeping the wavetable, let's turn this off. Like we're hearing noise variations here, but as soon as we land on one and just stay there, we hear this more as a timbre. But these are the kind of like really rich, and also there's a little bit of a vocal character to them, waveforms that do lend themselves to making yoinks and wobbles and growls and whatever. And then another thing you can do, let's look at, do we have a growl? Yeah, that maybe explores noise. You can see that what I'm doing here, sorry, that's very harsh. I'm actually using the Modwave native wavetable AB mode to morph between a noise-sourced formant and a sawtooth-sourced formant. And so we get a little bit of this, it's like a speaking or an airiness to it, right? Before we land on that really strong growl. Ow, my ears. Actually, in the Modwave version of these wavetables, there is also an MW bundle of these patches. They're very simple patches, but they help you understand how you might set these up and use them. Again, I'm not like an expert dubstep producer. I will put links to folks like AU5, who gives like really great tutorials on bass music production, and what's his bucket? Wait, who's the guy? Who's the guy? Oh, Virtual Riot. Virtual Riot, who's funny, a funny German kid who makes interesting music, I think, and really is a very gracious with his tutorial content. How long have we been going on these? 15 minutes. I wanted to do kind of a deeper dive on these, but, you know, it would have to be its own video. One thing that I think is super interesting that you should check out, even if you're not interested in the genre that we're talking about, is AU5's 2 tutorials about what he calls hypergrowls. And, you know, if you want to learn the tropes, I think, of like modern dubstep production, like they're all in there. And one thing I discovered, you know, there's a lot of people, not a lot, but you know, some customers of KRC Mathwaves have been like, oh, I was expecting more like FM growl stuff, you know. Okay, so I gave you these specific format things that are like exactly for creating growls. But there's another really interesting thing that I discovered as I was watching the Hypergrowl tutorials. I was noticing that like what AU5 was doing was making basically just a complex enough noise source that the way he does it, it creates kind of a watery sounding wavetable, but what I realized is really if you have a complex enough bass sound, like all of the post-processing stuff that you would do for like modern dubstep noises can be handled. And so if you consider the VAE Wavetables, which there are tens of thousands of in KRC Mathwaves, some of the versions like 122, which I'm using here, have really complex timbres, and they kind of sound bell-like, but there's a modification that we can do using clipping. So listen to this. So like that's not bell-like at all. What I'm doing is I'm using ModWave Native's wavetable modifier modes here. And I'm morphing between an infinite clip. Infinite clip basically, let's see, can I shut off this modulation? You're probably getting hypnotized. Okay, so, oops, let's turn it off here as well. What I'm doing is I'm morphing between two different Bezier VAE wavetables, and I'm applying infinite clip to one. Here's what this wavetable looks like and sounds like. You can hear it's sort of belly, and of course we've got some complex filter modulation going on it, but you can hear that underneath this sound, like essentially it starts with this bell-like and high-pitched timbre. There's a lot of zero crossings, but if I use infinite clip, this turns it into this complex kind of square wavy wavetable that's a lot noisier and is throwing off harmonics all over the place and sounds very aggressive with this kind of stuff on it. So there's just a little quick tip about how you can turn a pretty wavetable into a growly wavetable, okay? And I don't really want to spend any more time on that. And then we're doing a slightly different thing over here. And then, of course, we could combine techniques like this. Like here's one that uses the Hypergrowl and then also explicitly one of the Formant Wavetables. Does it have a Formant in here? Actually, that doesn't seem to be it. Oh, it's in a separate layer. Okay, so like over in A, we've kind of got a... I mean, I guess that's kind of a yoink. And then over in layer B, we've got one of these Formant-based growls. And then together... I guess in play mode you could see it a little bit more. I don't know what I'm playing there. Now, like I said, in a real dubstep kind of track, you would have other things, kind of after the synth that are even doing further processing to it. But we can get in the zone using things like ModWave. I guess maybe it's worth showing. So another thing is that the different layers use certain effects. So they use compression, right? And we've got like a harmonic chorus on the A layer here, which is kind of giving it some nice width. And then in layer B, what are we doing? We've got another chorus. There's apparently a delay effect on it. It's like a little slapback. And then for main effects, this is another like very common bass music production technique. There's a pretty extreme EQ going on here that's helping me bring out whatever kind of vocal timbre that I want. Right? And then in this case, my reverb is actually has a significant, a little bit of a pre-delay on it, so that we're also kind of enhancing that sort of slapback effect. Okay, I guess one more tip about patches like this. One thing that was really new to me is that, and again, I have to credit AU5 with this. He starts these serum patches with this very complex kind of watery waveform doesn't sound that much different from what I was showing here by manipulating a VAE wavetable. But he uses an insane amount of voices. So you'll see in this patch on layer A, we're actually using 10 voices with a detune of 7. But when you have this many voices, and if you return thickness up in ModWave, you could go to pretty extreme detunes. And that's that kind of cool, watery, color-based timbre that, you might then put like some chroma on and your color basing. Okay. How long have I been going on about these wavetables? About 23 minutes. I hope that explained what they are. You'll find them in KRC Mathwaves. The whole collection's like $29. Oh, like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content, he tried to say. Let's move on from bass wobble land and the Formant Wavetables to another formanty and resonanty sounding new wavetable type in KRC Mathwaves, VOSIM. And VOSIM stands for Vocal Simulator. And is that what it stands for? I'm going to go check my notes, but I'm pretty sure it's Vocal Simulator. And in my next segment, we'll talk about the new VOSIM Wavetables in KRC Mathwaves. Again, there are thousands of them, and you're going to like them. I'll talk to you in just a second. Okay, well, moving on to VOSIM. VOSIM is a technique that was developed in the 1970s, of all things, back in the very, very early days of computer music, when a fellow named Werner Kegi, I hope I'm getting his name right, figured out that you could create formants in a very computationally efficient way. Now, we saw before that I'd made a huge library of Formant Wavetables that were using a bandpass filtering technique. Now, those types of filters, to compute them at the time would be very hard and was certainly not real time. And people wanted a way to get the annoying computer voices that we have today, like in Alexa. I don't know why people wanted to do this, because they could have seen, how lousy things were going to get. But anyway, VOSIM is a very interesting technique. If we look at this waveform here, the core of the VOSIM technique is the realization that a sine wave with a certain frequency that's then has an exponential amplitude envelope applied to it creates a formant. And this is one of the simplest and easiest ways of getting a formant sound. And you can see that this waveform, which is what, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like 5 periods of a sine wave that again have this exponential decay on them, and then some space between it. In a wavetable context, we've got 2048 samples to work with. So the algorithm that I designed for this, takes a certain number of cycles, a certain length of the waveform, then crams it into there to create the Formant waveform. And this is clearly a so it's kind of and if we were to morph between different types of these VOSIM waveforms, we'll get these kind of vowel-y speech type sounds. My amazing vocal stylings. Are you impressed yet? Okay. So that's what I did. I created a huge library of these VOSIM-inspired wavetables that use this basic technique. Now, there are many different variations, some of which go into like kind of non-vocal territory. They sound like complex resonant filters operating on some kind of waveform. The thing that's interesting is the bass waveform is just a sine wave, which is just a pure harmonic, right? And you can see, like in this one, there's interesting stuff that happens across the wavetables. And this is maybe reminiscent of, you know, things like the Morley wavelet wavetables and the Bezier spline wavetables that I did previously. So the general algorithm used here was to create a set of keyframes. So you'll see in this one, and you'll find these in ModWave when you import them in new collections. There's KRC VOSIM Sine, KRC VOSIM Saw, and KRC VOSIM Square, which depart a little bit from the classic VOSIM technique of just using sine waves. Again, just to give some more harmonic richness. We'll get to those in a second. And so all of these different wavetables have a K value, and the K indicates how many keyframes they have. I did between 2 and 5, kind of selected at random. Let's look at a K3. I could just filter that. K3, right? So here are VOSIM wavetables that have 3 keyframes, and then we morph over the life of those keyframe positions to get to our 64 frame wavetable. There's one other hitch in this giddy up, is that any keyframe could have up to 4 different VOSIM waveforms in it, which is one of the parts of the technique. It's like by combining different VOSIM waveforms, we can create even different timbres and different vocal things. Now, I did not attempt in these wavetables, which I intended to be for like synthesis and for like musically useful stuff. I didn't get into Kagi's work about plosives, like he had a method for injecting noise to make p sounds, right? And fricatives, like those kind of sounds. We're really just concerned with like the vocal formants, right? Which are mostly, you know, more useful for this type of thing. But here's what one sounds like. Chorded. And there's many, many thousands of these. I'm not sure what this one's saying. It doesn't sound happy. And I'm playing fairly low on the keyboard here. Neat, right? These are kind of fun. Again, you could use these in all sorts of bass music. Or to do different types of things, right? Like there's some more, wait a minute, before we leave this, did I save my work? I kind of liked this one. I'm going to save that. Let's just save that as new. Okay. Let's go find some other VOSIM patches. There's maybe a couple. Oh yeah, there's a couple. We could do things like this. This is more synthy. Wow. So what's going on here is I am using some of the VOSIM saw waveforms. So an insight that I had is like, well, yeah, we could use the same technique of having a certain number of cycles and a certain length and making these resonances, but they don't have to be sine waves because we're not purely concerned with, you know, human vocal synthesis here, or, you know, making like Stephen Hawking's speech machine. We're trying to create, you know, new stuff, new synthesizer patches and new sounds, exploring new realms in timbre and tone. And so just like you saw in the VOSIM signs, there's a set of VOSIM saws and VOSIM squares. So I'm trying to find them. So these are some VOSIM squares. Let's just pick some at random here. Let's, this has keyframes of 4, VOSIM saw K4, and you'll see that I'm using one of Modwave's morph techniques on this. I'm using mirror stretch. Mirror stretch, I think, is the same thing as bend in Serum, so you're kind of mirroring the waveform and squeezing the parts together. But it's a little different, a little more straightforward in Oscillator 1. There's another VOSIM K4. Let's go with a simpler one. Let's maybe, oops, VOSIM saw. Let's filter that, right? Let's go up to maybe like a K2. A little simpler. And so all of the same wavetables are in these different collections, the sine, the square, and the saw, just using a different carrier, not just the sine, but the, the square or the saw. And these throw off many more harmonics and, are much richer, and we can, filter them in different ways. I mean, that almost has an orchestral kind of sound to it. And it's not particularly vocally, right? Now in isolation it would be. Interesting stuff you can do, right? Interesting stuff. Let's see. You can also do like more vocal things, obviously. So this is a kind of a rough attempt. Let's go to number 2. By running some of these sine VOSIM wavetables with a little bit of position modulation through the Vintage 8 modifier, we can get something that sounds, I don't know, maybe like a crappy sample from an Ensoniq Mirage or something. Interesting stuff, right? I didn't want to spend too much time on these. There's a lot to explore in here, a lot of different things that you could do. Anyway, that's VOSIM. Someone had asked me for VOSIM, and so I was like, yeah, I'll do my take on VOSIM. These are like super useful, super interesting. Maybe we'll play out with some of the Formant. Do you have any Formant performances that were a little different? So going back to the waveforms that I was using for those kind of bass music sounds, you can do standard synthesis stuff like this. So they can be pretty as well, or they can be, this is one when I was on Ian Dixon's show. Go follow Ian Dixon. He's pretty awesome. He does all these neat free collections of Modwave patches. There's kind of a strange Formant Vox choir sound. And I think what I did, I couldn't hear what I was doing, but I went and swapped one of these saws out for a Formant noise one, and somebody said, oh, well, that actually sounds really great. I can't guarantee we're going to get the same thing. Let's go to Formant white noise. I'm not sure which one we want to pick here. Ooh, Sure. Ooh. Oh, yeah. So that's kind of weird. I mean, it's not like a gritty sample, but it sure sort of sounds like a gritty sample. Interesting stuff you can do here. Hey, thanks for watching. Enjoy the new waveforms and wavetables that are in KRC Mathwaves. Get it at wavetables.lol. Like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content because you never want to miss an exciting episode where I sit around and noodle on ModWave and talk about, arcane and obscure synthesis methods. Yeah, how else would you spend an afternoon? That's it. I will talk to you later. These things I just demoed, they are not in the free collection, but there is a free collection of Mathwaves. There'll be links in the description. Go get them. A lot of other things I'll link to in the description of this video. And have a great day. Have fun. Happy synthesizing. Don't get yourself into a situation where this is the background music, because obviously you're in some kind of horror film. And that would be bad for you. Okay, bye.